The Power Factor Show with Rick, Steve, and Caleb. Episode 66, Part 2.
You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Brought to you by Safariland and Hodgdon, the gunpowder people.
All right, here's another stage from Dave. This is another IDPA stage.
Same Dave?
Same Dave. And this one is pretty cool, and it's kind of near and dear to a stage that I designed for our state championship, and it involves upending a card table or a table and using it for cover. Awesome. And, of course, the act of flipping the table up activates the threat targets. And so I think it's really cool, and I'm actually shamed by the extremely well-built props that they used for this. I mean, we built a prop that was going to be a single use. It just had to last long enough to get through a single match, and the level of workmanship showed that that's all it needed to do. This looks like something I would not want to leave out in a Seattle
the South Side
winter, because the South Side. This stuff looks like it would deteriorate real quickly, and so it was a really well built prop. And there's a YouTube video that goes along with it, so everybody will see how cool it looks. But the idea is you're sitting at the table. Again, we're using this nice procedure that's got our scoring, which is Vickers count, targets 4 threats, scored hits, best 3 on T1, best 2 on T2 through T4. Start and stop is an audible start with a last shot stop, and standard IDPA penalties apply. And the scenario involves, of course, the kind of card game gone bad kind of a deal. But
you're in the south side of Seattle playing poker with several questionable youths.
Well, it's interesting in that the stage that we had set up at our match was based on an actual mass murder at a poker game that took place in Seattle. It must have been 30 years ago now, but it was just like a friendly little game. Some guys busted in and shot everybody. And so that was kind of the inspiration for our stage that we set up. And it's, but it works anywhere. There's, friendly little card games that get shot up all the time.
Just a note, IDPA scenarios are really depressing a lot of the time. Like, if you read a bunch of those, you'll be like, man, I don't want to go out anymore.
Yeah. So the procedure is on buzzer, engage T1 with 2 shots to the body and 1 to the head. With weak hand or strong hand if shooter wants to reholster first, flip the table on its side, and from the cover of the table, engage T2 through T4 in tactical priority.
Wait, back up. So, where's my gun?
You're seated with a mug in your strong hand. Your weak hand is on the table, and the weapon is holstered.
So it's a draw and transition to my weak hand.
With weak hand, no. The weak hand figures into flipping the table up.
Oh, so flip the table. So when you said with weak hand,
with weak hand,
I was engaging.
Yeah. So with the weak hand, flip the table on its side.
Got it.
From the cover of the table, engage T2 through T4 in tac priority. So you're using
my weak hand to flip the table.
The thing that's kind of interesting is even though he says tac priority, he indicates tac sequence here. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's make sure, and one of the things that a legitimate criticism here is make sure that when you're using terms in your course descriptions for IDPA, because these terms matter, you're using the correct term. Tac sequence is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, whatever.
Right. And it's done when you have no cover.
Exactly. And not always, though, when you have no cover, because sometimes
it could be shooting like over a horizontal cover when you're not pieing.
Exactly.
Is when you do it.
When you're not pieing, when the threats aren't within a certain amount of distance, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Anyway, if you're going to use tac sequence, do make sure it says tac sequence, because some guy like me will come through in a squad and raise his hand and say, it says tac priority, why are you forcing me to shoot tac sequence?
But in this case, the illustration shows that you're using a table for cover, so you are going to shoot in tac priority.
Exactly.
So anyway, get rid of that 1, 1, 2, 1, 1 and shoot it in tac priority. But it's a cool stage. Again, I like it. Good shooting challenge. You got your headshot. Which is always challenging. I mean, that's one of the things. It was interesting. Somebody on one of the forums
at 5 yards. I don't even know how I do that.
Somebody posted on a forum at what distance do you usually see headshots? And I would say I have rarely ever seen a headshot at any distance but 10 yards. It's like people always want to make it the most challenging shot on the stage, so they put that target out at 10 yards.
And then it's a black hardcover target with just the head, and you're like, and you look at the stage designer and you think, someday.
Yeah, so I think this is pretty cool. Some might question, if you've got your table available to you as cover, why don't you flip it over before you engage the first target? I think that's just in the mind of the stage designer. But again, it also depends on how you interpret the rule that says if cover is available, it must be used. Usually, that's interpreted as being I don't want to call it a constraint, but a requirement of the shooter, whereas some people interpret that to be a requirement placed also on the stage designer. So if you have a position of cover in your stage, you can't tell me engage this target and then use cover.
Yeah,
I mean, it's sort of like if you're standing apart from the cover position, it's okay to say, okay, engage this guy while you're going to the cover position. But if I'm standing, let's say, sitting at a table, and I'm going to flip that table up anyway, some would say you should flip it up before you engage anything.
Right.
And I think, maybe that's a little too literal of a translation of or interpretation of the rule. But anyway, I would say it's really cool. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 rounds.
Is it 3 per?
No, it's best 3 on T1. Another thing about T1
that's right.
is
T1 is special. He gets more bullets.
Yeah, the procedure says 2 to the body, 1 to the head, but the scored hits says best 3. What we generally do, or almost invariably do, and it really helps. It creates some issues as well. But when we have a target that we want to be engaged 2 to the body and 1 to the head, rather than argue about whether the head is part of the body, but the body's not part of the head, and what if the third round hits him in the elbow and stuff, we put a strip of black tape across the neck on the perf that separates the body from the head, and just say the 2 body shots have to go below that piece of tape, and the headshot has to go above that piece of tape. And that way there's no guessing where was the shot intended, and we actually, one of my favorite aspects of that is we actually score them as separate targets. So you miss the headshot and get 2 to the body, you still get the FTN on the head. That's my favorite part.
Less draconian solution to that, and that's the word for today, is draconian.
I thought illustrative was the word for today.
No, that was
that was the previous episode.
Or an episode ago.
All right,
so the word for today is draconian. A slightly less draconian solution than that, and something I've seen, is to mandate in the course of fire that the target must have a minimum of 2 hits in the body and 1 hit in the head. Targets without a hit in the head will be scored as down 5. The remaining body hits will be scored with the best 2 hits. So
if I put around right into the perf, can that count as both the body and a head?
We would give you that as the head. If there's only 2 hits on the target.
Yeah.
So so in that scenario, how I've actually scored targets like that, where the course of fire description says targets must have a minimum of 2 shots to the body and 1 shot to the head to be scored. Targets lacking a head hit will be scored down 5. We had a guy shoot it once in the neck and once in the down 0, and then throw a mic somewhere.
Right.
So how we score that is because this perf hit, the best value for that, and in IDPS is the benefit goes to the shooter.
Sure.
So I gave that shooter a total of down 5 for that target because he had 1 in the head and 1 in the body, and I assumed that his other hit was a mic somewhere to the body.
Right. So the headshot wouldn't have been sufficient to end the.
Well, he's still down 5 because he's got a mic on there somewhere. Because he's got 1 in the head, and it said the course fire description says 2 to the body. Yeah. So you got to have that 1 in the body.
Right.
It essentially creates the 2 separate targets without the potential of 2 FTNs, which is pretty brutal.
So, but it seems to me that the whole point of the 2 to the body and 1 to the head is that the headshot is intended to end a situation that the 2 body shots didn't. So if you don't put the headshot on it, you haven't neutralized the target.
Which, in theory, makes sense, but because the rulebook's not really clear on how to deal with that sort of thing, you end up with, a hard line of hardcover, or you end up with the way
I was reading these, how other people solve it, and they say, what we do is we take one target and black out the whole body, and then right next to it we put another target and black out the head. And I'm like, or we cut the head off of one target and put it on a separate target stand next to another target that's got the head cut off.
I've seen that. I've seen the cut off heads.
And
I was actually... You know what?
Okay.
I was in Area 5.
That's one way to do it.
So USPSA match, Area 5, they wanted to force you to do a Mozambique. So they took metric targets, cut the heads off, and put an 8-inch plate behind them. So you had to go bang, bang, bang into the plate. That is a really good way to do that.
I like that.
That's actually when I think about it, that's a really great way to do that, because if the steel doesn't fall, it's not neutralized. Problem solved. There's no arguments about paper and steel being together.
One of the target arrays that we had suggested for a stage to get too far afield is to put the plate behind the paper target where you can't see the plate. You don't know you've hit it until it drops off the stand and lands on the ground. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I could not use a paper target as like a non-scoring prop that was only there to shoot through.
Now, what they've done at the World Shoot is they actually put activators behind scoring paper targets. So if you shot the scoring paper target in an area in the down 3, it wouldn't hit the activator. So you had to hit it at least once in down 0 to get the activator to go down. I've also seen...
but all the hits counted on the paper, whether they hit the steel or not?
Regardless of whether or not they hit the activator.
Right.
I've also seen clay pigeons used as substitutes for head boxes, where you would have to, two to the body and then engage the clay bird with one shot as well. My only concern with a stage like this is any stage where you have shooter-activated props, you have to have a way to deal with the guy who's going to come in there and he's going to be amped up. So a table flip, all right? So if I go to flip a table, the gamer in me is going to put as minimal effort into flipping that table as possible so that it lands the way I want it to land. Some dude come in there with a lot of amped up adrenaline and... flip that thing up rotations.
You definitely have to build the prop.
Like you have to arrest the table somehow, so we had a
stage where you came to the top of a flight of stairs, and then there was a wall. Well, the wall was just like could have been a sheet of cardboard. All it was just something to shoot over. But some people wanted to run up and use it as a means of stopping their momentum. And so like a 200-pound guy comes flying up the stairs and runs into this piece of cardboard. Obviously, he's just going to fly off the end of the platform. But as
hilariously,
but I mean, as we're setting it up, I'm like going, it's not. All it is a shooting barrier. You're just something to shoot over. It's not a structure. You're not expected to be stopped by it, And we ended up having to rebuild it and use a piece of plywood and stuff
because
instead.
People wanted to.
Because you can't stop them from doing what they're going to do. You essentially have to kind of monkey-proof everything. And
Stage Design 101. Design your stages for the strongest, dumbest person out there. And I don't mean that as an insult, but people get amped up on adrenaline. The timer goes off. They forget their plans, and you've got a guy out there who, lifts weights or something like that. I've seen guys damage props because they were really enthusiastic about activating them.
Yeah.
So, design your stages with Sylvester Stallone in mind. Like, how is Stallone going to activate this? Is he going to smash it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Right.
Rocky jokes. Come on.
Yeah.
Rocky.
No, that was good. Okay.
Little 80s.
Right. So, Dave.
Good stages,
Thanks
Dave.
again. Yeah, Dave, great stages.
All right, so our next stage is designed by Larry, and Larry, I do want to mention this, he's an engineer, and he likes to design stages that mirror themselves. So I am not an engineer, and I like asymmetrical stages, Larry, so I might not be... Wow! That is a great stage diagram. Hold that up there. That is fantastic.
That's high tech.
Look at that. That's engineering right there. So, stage description. Standing up range of port A with both hands touching the X's on port. So I'm
the
up
port
range.
should be about 5 feet high.
Yeah.
About this high. Yeah.
And honestly, a 5-foot port is a pretty good place because most people can reach that without having to do some sort of weird body contortions. I've had stages where I've had to start touching the X's where I'm, up on 2 tiptoes, just barely getting my fingertips on them because some Marfan thought it would be hilarious to put big X's up way high where I can't reach them. I don't like that. It's not nice. Knocking down Pepper Popper 1 activates Drop Turner T4, which disappears at rest. Knocking down Pepper Popper 2 activates Swinger T6, which remains visible at rest. I like that because it lets me know as the shooter what's a disappearing target and what is a target that I'm going to have to get some rounds off of.
Now, one of the things that I would recommend that I'm having little luck getting other people to do this is if you have, when you're drawing out your diagram, if it's a target like a swinger that appears and remains visible, call that out in the diagram as an AT for appearing target.
Ooh.
If it's a drop turner that appears and then disappears,
DT.
call it a DT for disappearing target.
Very nice.
And that way, it's more readily apparent when you look at the diagram whether the targets are they're swingers or drop turners. You can also use little arrows and curly cues and stuff to indicate target movement. But I just like to when I'm reading through the diagram, it makes it a little bit more clear that way.
Now, what's interesting about this is the way it's set up is you can actually see multiple targets from point A. So I could go and engage, take these long shots at T7 or T8, or take some really long shots over here at Pepper Popper 1 and Pepper Popper 2 if I wanted to from port A.
Right. Yeah. So you could look through port A and
do a bunch
see
of
the
shooting.
targets both through this kind of open doorway, T7,
Right.
T8. But can you also then look through this port?
Because port
and
A
see the
will
steel.
show you through port C.
Yeah.
So it's a real interesting design, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. So I think the neat thing about this stage, and something that came up, is that there's I'm just looking at the diagram. I can see 5 different ways that I would shoot it. They're just right off the top of my head. And it's cool, and I cannot stress how much, as a USPSA shooter, I love stages that you take 5 guys with 5 different levels of athleticism, 5 different levels of shooting skill, And even in the Super Squad, you get that, because no one's going to argue that Bob Vogel isn't more athletic than Rob Lethem. And no one's going to say that, and Robbie, who has won, multiple Bianchi Cups, is one of the most accurate shooters on the planet. So there's something in there that, maybe I'm really fast and I can just fly around courses, but I can't shoot accurate, but I can't shoot long range for 2 craps. Well, there's a way I can shoot that. Maybe I'm really good at setting up in and out of various ports, but I'm not so good at reloading on the move. There's a way I can shoot that. I really have got to say, Larry, that's a really good stage, man. I like that a lot. I would love to have been at Area 1 to shoot that stage. So,
Well, the thing that I think is interesting in looking at this, of course, as we mentioned in episodes about going to matches and scrutinizing match booklets in advance of actually seeing how the stages are set up.
that actually probably looks like what that stage turned out to be.
I'm thinking, from where would I engage PP2 so that I could immediately engage T6? It's a swinger. Okay. I was thinking it was a disappearing target. And then after I engage, because I'm thinking, okay, if I shoot through here, how the heck am I going to get all the way? If I shoot through port A, pass through port C, how the heck am I going to get to T6 before it disappears? But but
it remains visible.
Right, it does, because it's a swinger.
I think, and this is just me kind of looking at it, how I would probably shoot this is I would start at here, and I would truck ass over here and get T9, T10, and T11, do a little bit of a shuffle monkey, and then I would actually probably do... I would run as fast as I could, then over here to port C, get these poppers, pop out of there, try to get T4 as it did its drop turner thing, get T5. Then kind of from there, it's sort of up in the air on whether I go over here and get T1 through T3 or go over here and get T6 through T8. That's a good stage. That's the kind of stage that the 5-minute walkthrough period ends, and guys are like, wait, dang, I'm gonna have to figure that out.
I mean, if you engaged Pepper Popper 1 from port A,
that's the swinger. That activates
Pepper Popper 1 activates the disappearing T4.
So I wouldn't mess with that at all.
So where the heck? So you can see it through port A, but you definitely don't want to engage it through port A, because it's going to be long gone before you get there.
On the flip side, what if you could eliminate
What if you ignored it?
What if you ignored T4? What if you could eliminate a reload by how many rounds is it? 26.
6.
So if I could eliminate a reload or doing, what is it? I'm going to be down. I'm going to have 2 mics, right? But no failure to engage because it's a disappearing target. So I eat the mics. If the rest of my stage is awesome by eliminating that, Who knows?
Well, if you could see T5 without having to actually approach port B.
Like if I'm like right,
right at the end of the wall.
Let me turn that around. So if I'm right here in the middle of the stage,
if you're standing here at the end of this wall and can see T5,
and I can go T9, T10, T11, swing over, get T5, then is it worth it to leave? Larry, this is a good stage.
Do you have to shoot those U.S. poppers through this port?
I would imagine so.
Because if you didn't have to go over here at all, if you just didn't have to go any further over than here, like you'd engage T5 through port B, ignore T4, but it looks like you're going to have to go over to port C to get the U.S. poppers.
So one thing that I have to comment about is this is easily one of the best stage diagrams I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of stage diagrams, and the problem that you run into a lot is you'll get the match book for a major match, and you'll be flipping through the stage diagram, and then you'll go to the match, and you'll be like, what? That, I can imagine that if I went to that match, that stage would look probably within 90% of what that stage diagram looks like, and that is fantastic, because as a shooter, I can look at this and go, you know what? I can't probably engage U.S. Popper 1 and U.S. Popper 2 from any other place other than Port Charlie. So
approaching right up to Port Charlie.
So I'm going to have to go into Port Charlie to a reasonable extent to get those targets. And I think that's how you design a stage, man. Well done, Larry. Damn.
Stand by. You're finished. All
right. So what do we got next?
I don't know. Are we running out here?
We're down to 3 stages. So Larry, I'm not going to crumple this one up and throw it. I'm going to sit it here with respect.
Okay. So here's an example of a stage that we got submitted.
Do we have any bad stages?
Well, that's where I'm kind of going with this one. No stage is a bad stage. It's just a good stage trying to come out.
No, that's not true. There are bad stages out there. I'm sorry. There are some terrible ass stages.
That's just because the good stage didn't come out.
Fine.
It was still locked within the bad stage.
It was repressed by the terrible stage.
So I'm really going to kind of focus. One of the things that we talked about in the intro to the episode is that you'll have stages that'll have elements that are impractical or even illegal. And here's an example of a stage. This was submitted by Michael, and this is a USPSA stage. And the design element that I'm referring specifically to is at the back of the stage. You'll see T8, T9, and T10.
And a pepper popper. What the hell's that guy doing there?
And the issue is that because targets are impenetrable.
Wait, is this a USPSA?
This is USPSA course fire. Yeah, because targets are impenetrable, you've got a scoring target T9 that's swinging in front of 2 no-shoots.
So how do I know if
a round passed through and hit the no-shoot? I mean, you could miss T10 and hit the no-shoot, both targets being stationary. But if you're swinging, kind of tracking T9, you could shoot multiple rounds that pass through T9 and hit the no-shoots, and that's virtually impossible to score.
Now, if T9 was a drop turner, that's a different story then.
Yeah, it's just the issue of because of impenetrability, having the scoring target swinging in front of the no-shoot would make it impossible to score because you couldn't determine if rounds were pass-throughs or not.
Yeah.
And the way this is set up, you could kind of narrow your field of view to the extent that the swinger only appears when it's centered between the 2 no-shoots.
Right.
And another issue here is you've got barrels being used as vision barriers in an impact zone, and I tend not to like to have barrels down there.
Bullets hitting barrels, maybe, and then then you get a pass through on that barrel.
You've got to score the barrel every time.
Right, barrels are impenetrable.
Rounds can get into the barrel it's kind of an interesting phenomenon where the round will pass through the edge of the barrel, but it will stay inside and race around inside.
And you hear it.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this stage here in just a second. So, I mean, I'm looking at the stage diagram, and I'm confused. I don't know what the hell it is I'm supposed to do on this stage, to be perfectly honest.
We're starting at the barrels over here on the stage left.
Hands on the X's.
Hands on the X's, gun loaded and holstered. Upon start signal, draw and engage targets as they become visible. So you've got targets available through ports, but you're not required to shoot through the ports.
What?
For instance, you've got a port here in this wall.
Right, but I could take it earlier.
Exactly.
I'm assuming I could take it earlier.
Now let's say if you're shooting a revolver, you might want to go T1, T2, T3. Reload, and then get T5 and 6 and then 4 through that port.
Where am I supposed to get
having already moved downrange. You could get 7 after you've approached this last
So
port.
you're kind of into a 180 trap there as well with
Well,
T7.
and again, we're trying to determine, I think, too much maybe from the way the drawing illustrates the stage. This is one of those examples where once the thing is set up, I mean, I've literally
completely different.
Seen a stage diagram that led me to believe a target was going to be 30 feet away, and when I saw the stage setup, it was 30 yards away.
Right.
And so the way these things are drawn is more, I think, a matter of, okay, these targets are going to be on your left, and those targets are going to be on your right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think drawing too many conclusions about the exact engagement sequence or what's going to be visible from where, is maybe asking too much. But
we've been spoiled by Larry's stage diagram.
Exactly. So I would say, this stage, you've got, the stage definitely flows from left to right and then downrange.
Very clearly designed by a right-handed shooter.
Yes. But, I mean, I'd say I have shot many stages that are very similar to this,
I think, and that's the thing about the stage. And again, I'm not saying this to knock the stage designer, but I look at a stage like this and I just kind of go, because I've probably shot a stage just like this or very similar to this 100 times, and there's nothing really remarkable about it. There's no, hey, that's really cool. There's no sparkle to it, and sparkle really.
Sure, sparkle.
It's been a long day.
And I find that when you've shot 500 matches, stages that are extremely original or extremely clever are going to be pretty few and far between.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might find one stage at a match that really makes you kind of go, man, that is a cool stage.
Yeah.
And so I would not condemn this stage because it's not cool.
Yeah, no, we're not saying it's bad. It's just, it's vanilla ice cream. It's delicious. Everybody likes vanilla ice cream, but there's no toppings or, crazy flavorings on it. It's just good old-fashioned vanilla ice cream, and everybody loves it.
Yeah. So... yeah, I think, my major comment again about the stage would be the swinging no-shoot T9, or the swinging threat target T9 that swings in front of two no-shoots. If you're not going to actually block the ability to engage T9 so that you can see it only when it's clear of the no-shoots, that could be rearranged a little bit at the back of the stage there. Maybe just split the array, the T8 and T10 arrays further apart, so that the swinger doesn't swing in front of the no-shoots, if that is indeed how it's supposed to be laid out.
But again, this is one of those stages and that we've talked about with the stage diagram where you're kind of like, because the stage diagram and how that actually looks on the range could be very diametrically opposed, and you could end up with the stage that has the same sort of idea of the left to right downrange flow, but ends up with a bunch of different targets that don't look like they did in the diagram at all.
It is nicely single stack friendly, though.
It is fairly single stack friendly.
So you go 2, 4, 6, 8, reload, 2, 4, 6, reload, 2, 4, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, no,
you got to shoot PP1 first.
Right, but so if you're shooting a revo, you go T1, T2, T3, reload, do 5, 6, and 4 through that port.
Right.
That was my idea if you're shooting a revolver. Then move down, shoot 2 rounds on T7.
Shoot that popper. Let it
flop around.
Yeah,
you might want to do PP1 first. Get your T7. You're going to have to do some kind of a reload here somewhere, though, because it's a total of 9 rounds.
If I was shooting that with a revolver, I'd shoot T7, shoot the popper, so I got 3 rounds left, shoot T8, do my reload, then shoot T10, because assuming that your swinger's neutral position is at rest in between those two shoots, I want it to be as slow as, especially if I'm shooting a revolver. I want that thing to be sitting as still as possible.
Yeah. So I like that. Like I said, like we said, there's nothing extravagant or especially clever or cute about it, but I kind of like it because it's just very straightforward. I've shot hundreds of stages like it, and I'd shoot this one and enjoy it.
All right, so our last stage has like 10 pages of documentation, and I'm going to skip straight to the stage design.
Now that's real quick. This was another stage that featured a swinging target that passed in front of other targets.
Oh, really?
And so this is actually the revised. The diagram is actually the revised version.
So now, one of the things that I like about this is it actually includes a fairly detailed just diagram. So this is not. And we'll see if we can get this up here on the screen for you guys. But this isn't a shooter's diagram or anything like that. This is for the course designer to look at and go, oh, that's where everything's supposed to go. The guy who's actually setting that up with the hammer. And I think one of the things that you see, and you've probably seen this too, is there's often a disconnect between the guy who puts the stage on paper and the guy who's got the screw gun and the hammer who actually has to put it together.
Yeah,
and
he's got his distances in here.
Yeah.
And this is the original stage as it appeared when it was originally submitted, because at the end of this little narrow hallway, at the end, you'll see it says no shoot swinger. And that was swinging in front of two scoring targets, and that was the initial, and that's what got this 8-page discussion email exchange. Actually, Walt talked us up on his show. I watched an episode. He's on the Gun Rights Radio Network.
Please tell me you remember the name of his show, because if you can't drop that, we're going to look like
the producer's
a-holes.
Going to come up with it.
There you go. Always to the producer.
He mentioned our show, and he mentioned, I think, the little email exchange we had on the stage design. And it was another one of those stages where, he had some interesting ideas, and the element of the swinging no-shoot just wasn't going to work. So they're looking now at the revised stage after 8 pages of
So
email.
There's no swinging no-shoot in here anymore?
No, he took it out. It would have been down here at the end of the hall, and it's just been removed.
I kind of like this. I mean, again, this is kind of like what we said. This is, chocolate ice cream, vanilla ice cream. I prefer... So, hang on, I prefer stages like this to the one that we just had before it, because instead of a fairly codified, you're obvious in the stage we just talked about, you're obviously going to move from left to right. There's a very clear order that the stage designer wants you to engage the targets in. What I like about this is there's a big old shooting area. So the order that you're going to engage the targets in is pretty much up to you. You go into the shooting area and whack them as you see them. And I like that because it means right-handed shooters can shoot it from left to right. Left-handed guys can go from right to left. Maybe you're really good at long-range stuff, so you want to schwack these pepper poppers from the back of the box in a position where you can still get the static targets that are hidden behind these walls. I can't say this enough. I'm a huge fan of stages that give me as the shooter the option on how I want to engage, execute that stage. And I think that was, what I didn't like about that previous one was obviously I want to do it like this. Mm-hmm. And this one is go to town, boys.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the upon start signal from box A, engage only. Now, one of the things you might want to consider is from box A only, engage only ST1 through ST4.
Right.
This does not prevent you from engaging ST1 and ST4 from somewhere else.
Right. It just says engage them from box A, which means, and I've seen guys do this. They'll take
You can't shoot anything but the steel from box A, but it doesn't say you can't shoot the steel from somewhere else.
Right. And I've seen guys who, in situations like that, if they're not comfortable with one of those shots, they'll just go boom, 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 shoot 4 really quick shots, and if they get lucky on one of them, great, and then they'll re-engage the steel from another place in the course, and pick up a couple of seconds here or there.
And it also depends on how far the targets are.
Right.
If ST1 and so, let's say ST1 and ST2 are exactly 10 yards from box A, there's probably nowhere else from which they could be engaged because you break the rule about how close you are when engaging steel.
And if you look at the other stage diagram, it almost looks like ST1 is behind the 180. if you
advance to the box.
If you advance to the box. So it looks like, so the way it's set up, and again, kind of what I like about that is it gives you the option, but also if you're not paying attention and you just think, oh, I can just run up to the box and shoot them,
right.
and then I do that, well, then I'm going home because I've broken the 180 or I've shot steel from too
close. But it
close.
does look like you could perhaps, depending on how far uprange this horizontal line is, the shooting area could include an area from which you were 10 yards away from ST4. Well, it shows ST4 is called out twice.
Two ST4s.
ST3 and ST4, if they're 10 yards downrange from the uprange end of the box, this stage procedure would not preclude you from engaging them from within the box.
And that's one of the reasons why I think we both feel it's important to include ranges in your. And actually, we have the actual distance diagram in here, don't we? No, that doesn't tell me.
Well, it does call out some of the distances,
but not the one I was looking for.
Right, the distance from box A to ST1.
Right, exactly. Well, I want to know the distance from the back of from the front of the main shooting area to ST3 and ST4. So stuff like that is actually really important to include in your stage descriptions, just because shooters are going to want to know what's legal and what's safe. I want to know, can I, if I throw mics on ST3 and ST4 from box A, can I re-engage them? And instead of me having to ask the RO that question, put it in the stage description. I really feel like, a sentence, ST3 and ST4 may be re-engaged from the main shooting box. There you go, problem solved.
Right. Provided you're now, if
assuming the stage is designed within safety guidelines,
you'd have to have a lot of times you'll have a stage where you'll just find a fault line nailed onto the ground in the middle of a shooting area,
right?
And that's to prevent you from going downrange of that point. Even though you're still within the legal shooting area, you can't engage a steel target that's downrange from that point without being disqualified.
And it'll say something like ST4 must be engaged from behind fault line, Delta X-ray Zulu or something like that.
Yeah. So it's a cool stage, and of course, because one of the things that I, as primarily a single stack shooter, is identifying the number of rounds to be flung from the various areas. I can't, like if you're shooting limited or open, you might find a sweet spot on a stage like this where you could stand and fire 20 rounds.
Right.
But since I'm going to have to do how many rounds is it total?
It's 20. Wait. Crap.
It doesn't say.
4 plus 22. So 26 rounds.
Yeah, so there's going to be a little bit of reloading going on there.
1 or 2.
Yeah. So, it's one of those deals where, I've got to pick my spots, find out, this stage, there's probably quite a bit of running around to do. Because I can imagine if I'm on the left side of the stage, I'm not going to be able to see maybe T7 and maybe T5, depending on how they're laid out. And if I go all the way over the other side of the stage, I might not be able to see T4 or T6 or maybe T10, because T9 and T8 are at the end of a hallway, and those walls might block the view of T10 and T11 as you're at the extreme sides of the layout.
Yeah.
And so it's like some cool stuff in it.
Kind of like one of those risk-reward stages where I bet you could take long shots and get a lot of stuff from a further position.
Yeah.
Or do you want to charge up, move around a little bit, get higher percentage shots? So
this could be. One of the other things too is that stages like this, sometimes you'll see shooters zigzag as they're trying to pick up the different targets, and then you'll see other shooters kind of move in a circle. Kind of go up one side, across, and then back down the other side. And again, it depends a lot on where and if you're going to do your reloads and stuff. But it's cool, and it's another one of those stages that I think the diagram is it actually is going to look like that when it's set up.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of. When we did the double tap match review, there was one stage where a wall in the diagram was kind of shaped like this, and it made the stage look like it was L-shaped, but the wall in reality was shaped like this, and so the stage was almost round. And just changing the shape of this wall completely altered the layout of the stage.
Yeah.
And so this one, I think it looks like it would probably be, it would look pretty much just like this when it was set up. But there's some interesting challenges in here.
Cool. Yeah, no, I like that stage. So if you guys have, this is probably the first of many episodes that we'll do on stage review and design. So again, if you have stages that you want to send us to review, send us to look at, or to, crumple up and fling over our shoulders, Jesse, send us the stage. Send us a stage description with it. That actually really helps us get an idea of what it is you as the designer want us to do with the stage. YouTube links are great to watch people shooting them. They're not necessary, but the most important thing is send us that stage, send us a stage description, and where are they going to send it?
You're going to email it to powerfactorshow@gmail.com.
And if you've got comments about the show, or you've got want to post some links to YouTube videos of you shooting any of these stages we've talked about, or stages that you're going to submit, go to facebook.com/powerfactorshow and point those things in there. Thanks for watching, guys.
See ya.